All right. How is everyone today? Good? Do you guys still have food coma? Okay. Let's do an exercise, okay? Just to wake everyone up. So how many people are running MarkLogic in AWS right now? Okay, I don't need you to raise your hand. Actually stand up if you're running MarkLogic in AWS. Stand up, yes. That's an exercise. Okay, good. All right. Okay, next question. You can sit down. How many of you are running MarkLogic in Azure? Stand up, please. Oh, wow. We actually have almost 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, sit down. Okay. Now, if you guys consider yourself an expert in cloud, please stand up. Come on, come on. Don't be yes, we have an expert. Yes, nice. Okay. For the rest of us, and we know who to talk to after the session, right? And for the rest of us, we're going to learn something together. And I'm hoping that I'm going to learn something from every one of you as well. All right. I'm Leo. I'm a product manager from MarkLogic. And I work on features such as manageability and infrastructure. Specifically, I work on features in AWS, how to deploy MarkLogic in AWS, Azure, and other cloud platforms. I also work on how to containerize MarkLogic. So some of you might have come to my session yesterday. So that was a really fun session too. So yay. So this is my co-presenter, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Mazur. I'm a principal sales engineer for MarkLogic. I'm based out of Washington, D.C. I support our public sector, whether it's the federal government on the civilian side, as well as some of our state and local customers. And I will give you the perspective of some of our customers and some of the best practices that we've learned over the years.
All right, another exercise. What are some of the motivations for cloud migrations? Any takers in your organization? Cost? Great question, great answer. Convenience, nice. And skill out, great question, answer. And any other? Okay. We see that when we talk to our customers, and I talk to Sarah and some of our field folks, a lot of the answers that the CTOs and CIOs in companies tell us is it's easier to spin up new applications. You need less staff to maintain the IT stack. You require less physical space on cloud, less hardware expenses, and also scalable and elastic. So all these good benefits for cloud deployments really motivate people to move their applications to cloud. We actually, there's a customer story I want to tell you. There's a customer, they are thinking about migrating to their applications and data to cloud. So they did a lot of experiments and find that, it was actually really easy to migrate to one of the cloud platforms. However, they look at the cost. They were not really happy with the cost that they were getting at. So they actually migrated back to their on-prem environment. So that's a very interesting thing. And what happened is, later, they look at their workloads. They realize their applications, some of the applications are having consistent workload. And another piece of the application they have actually have variable workload. So they concluded, why don't we just keep some of the consistent workload on-prem and move the variable workload to a cloud environment to really leverage the flexibility and elasticity of the cloud. And this kind of hybrid situation really helped them to save the cost. And guess what? When they actually move back to cloud environment, they moved to another cloud vendor because they got a great deal. This is what we say that they avoided the locked-in situation. In our sense, it is the cloud neutrality that they really achieved. So when it comes to clouds, you really should consider that keep your bags packed all the time. Your data is the most valuable assets. So make sure that it is easy to get your data out as it is to move into the cloud platforms. So this is today's agenda. So very packed. So we're going to first talk about what MarkLogic offers in cloud, and then I'm going to deep dive into our offering in AWS, which is a VPC cloud formation template in the new 905 release. Next, I'm going to walk you through MarkLogic on the Azure and our offering in solution template. Then Sarah is going to take you through some customer stories. Then we're going to go into the Q&A session. All right, MarkLogic in the cloud. We've been making continuous innovations in the cloud, just as the cloud platforms are moving really fast with their new features. Almost every day, AWS and Azure, they are putting out new features. For MarkLogic, we offer both Azure and AWS support. And with that, what we mean is both cloud platforms and us, we support our customers if we run into issues, the customers run into issues, both the cloud platforms and MarkLogic will try to resolve the problem for you. We also offer a really quick developer on-ramp, which means we provide example templates to help a person who is new in MarkLogic platforms to start the MarkLogic cluster very easily in cloud environments. We also are making our deployments in cloud very secure for our customers. I'll talk a little bit more later in our offerings. Of course, MarkLogic server features. We have a lot of server features that are very suitable for cloud environments. Some of the server features that, when we're talking about the cloud deployments, it's not just about how we help our customers deploy in the cloud, but also our core server features are also kind of cloud features to start with. We designed MarkLogic as a distributed databases, and it's very scalable. That's very suitable for cloud environments to start with. And some of the other core server features, such as rolling upgrade, the tiered storages and manageability features and security features, they are all very suitable for cloud environments. Tiered storage, you can leverage the different storage pricing in cloud platforms. Manageability feature, it can help you to monitor both on-prem and cloud environments so that you have a healthy environment. For all the features for MarkLogic core server, we do extensive regression testing, both on-prem and in cloud environments. We also provide very good use cases and best practices for you to easily migrate to your cloud environment. One of the highlights I want to bring out, which is just available now in 905, is the config management API. It is a quick deployment of MarkLogic databases. So with so few lines of code, you can deploy a database with high availability across multiple availability zones. There's no need to set up the forest and replication anymore. It used to be a lot more complicated, and now with config management API, we'll be able to integrate in the cloud environment very easily and smoothly. Now I'm going to shift gear a little bit, delve into the AWS features. This is our listing on the AWS Marketplace. We offer MarkLogic Developer AMI and the MarkLogic Essential Enterprise AMI. The Developer AMI you can use your BYOL license or the developer license. For the Essential Enterprise, you have you can pay by hours with the Essential Enterprise license. And with 905, we're trying to make the AWS offerings faster, better, and more secure. With faster and better, we provided the one-click AMI on Marketplace. What it means is the AMI, MarkLogic AMI, will have a default 10 gig volume attached right away, so that when you click on the offering, it will just start up a MarkLogic instance right away. with the volume attached. The second piece is the CloudFormation templates for the custom VPC. So we see a lot of requests from customers that they run in their own private custom VPCs. What we changed was we enhanced our CloudFormation template to provide our clustering deployment in your existing VPC. Or if you want to do a new VPC, you can also leverage this CloudFormation template from 905. The last piece with 905 is we make it a lot more secure. We provided the AWS KMS native support. Here's a typical deployment architecture for the VPC templates. This is a very quick start for a production-ready deployment for MarkLogic. As I mentioned, there are multiple templates. You can use the template to deploy the MarkLogic cluster into your existing VPC, or you start your new VPC. And it allows a customization, and we're making changes constantly in a very agile fashion. Let's look at the diagram a little bit closely. We enhanced to include the CloudWatch alarm and included the instance recovery alarm, as well as the Lambda to leverage the managed elastic network interface. So MarkLogic is deployed into 3 availability zones, and each of the zones you can deploy multiple nodes of MarkLogic. And we're using DynamoDB as a metadata store here. There's a lot of high availability features that we leverage from AWS platform. Now I'm going to a quick demo of the AWS VPC. I'm going to switch to my laptop. Okay. Yes. All right, I'm in my AWS console, and this is a CloudFormation template. Let me create a stack. And here, I can get my credential, the VPC templates. It is sitting on our S3 bucket right now because the new 905 template were just submitted last week, so it hasn't get through the marketplace listing yet. But this is our private listing for now. I'm going to give it a stack name. Let's see, MarkLogic World 2, Test 1. I already had the test, so I'm going to give the stack a IAM role, which we already have. Is MI role admin. I'm keeping the volume size as 10 gig. I'm keeping the GP2 volume type. Choosing M3.medium for this demo. I'm not using spot price for this demo. And for the SSH key, I already have one set up. Use ML key. Number of zones, I'll keep it at 3. You can also choose 1 if you don't want the availability zone. I'm keeping 1 node per zone so that this is going to be a 3-node cluster. Now I can choose the availability zone. This stack is actually in US West region, so the 3 availability zones are available here. I'm going to disable the instance public IP and keep the logging as none as default. The network looks good to me, so I'll just keep it as default. And here is the MarkLogic configuration. I will put MLW admin as the admin user and password. Keep the licensee and license key as default. You can input that later when the stack is up. The second page, I'm going to give a tag so it's easier to identify my resources. Test 1. I'll keep all the other as default. I don't need the rollback triggers or the other advanced features. And click on Next. Okay, here's a chance that you can look at what you're inputted in the earlier steps. And then acknowledge that AWS CloudFormation template might create IAM resources with custom names. Now I click on Create. All right, creating progress. It will take about 8 minutes to 10 minutes. So I'm going to continue my presentation, and let's come back to it at the Q&A session. All right, let me switch back to presentation. Next, I'm going to talk about MarkLogic offering on Azure. MarkLogic and Azure, we formed official partnership in MarkLogic 9, which is last year when we first released MarkLogic 9. We're really happy that we become a very important technology partner with Azure and getting a lot of help from our Azure consultant. Brian is actually sitting there, who is the expert you can talk to after the session. So with MarkLogic and Azure, we offer a MarkLogic image that's based on CentOS in Marketplace. In addition to that, starting 9.01, we started offering an easy-to-access, simple-to-use Azure solution template, which can set up a single-node MarkLogic cluster or a 3-node MarkLogic cluster with all the Azure resources already set up for you. We also offer clear guidance and quick start and documentation to help you quickly on-ramp both MarkLogic and the Azure platform. This is how you can get to MarkLogic's offering from the marketplace. If you search MarkLogic, you will see the 3 different offerings. The first is the BYOL Azure image for MarkLogic. And the third one is also the Azure image for MarkLogic. These two are actually using different licensing type. And the middle one, MarkLogic 9 cluster deployment, will help you to get to the solution template that set up MarkLogic one node or 3-node cluster quickly. So for Azure solution template, it is an example deployment for a production MarkLogic cluster on Azure. As I mentioned, it's a 1-node or 3-node cluster, and it really defines the Azure solution template, allows you to define the relationship between the MarkLogic nodes and Azure resources, such as the networking components, the security groups, and all those concepts. And it's also open source project on GitHub, so it's very flexible. You can go check it out and modify to your own use. And of course, you can also submit requests to us through the GitHub so that we can make adjustments in future releases. This is the architecture for the MarkLogic solution template on Azure. For the solution template, we included the MarkLogic high availability features for the default databases. So when you set up the MarkLogic 3-node cluster on Azure, it automatically creates the master forest for the default databases for MarkLogic, as well as the replica forest on another nodes. As you can see, we also leverage a lot of other components on Azure, such as the virtual network, the availability set that helps us to have infrastructure high availability, and the managed disk for data storage for each of the virtual machine and MarkLogic node. Now I'm going to delve into the solution template demo. Okay. Let me get to my demo machine. All right, this is the Azure interface and dashboard. Going to search MarkLogic here. All right, I'm going at the MarkLogic 904 cluster deployment. Here you can see some of the information about MarkLogic, and as well as some of the resources you might find useful. I'll start a cluster deployment process. The first step, we configure some of the basic settings. I'll give it a cluster deployment name, which is MLW test 2. I'm going to have a 3-node cluster and using the pay-as-you-go subscription. I'm actually going to use an existing resource group, which is MLW test. Okay. East US. Somehow it does not like that. I'm going to just create a new resource group. And East US. Okay. The second step is configure MarkLogic configuration. And the first admin user is the MarkLogic admin user. MLW admin. For the admin password, there's actually a pretty strong password rule here. So I pre-created a password so that it will pass the validation. W admin test. I'm glad it matches. It's a very long password. And I'll keep the licensee and license key as none here as well. The next step is configure the cluster resources. I'll keep the MarkLogic high availability enabled and load balancer public. I also enable the IPv4, IPv6. For storage, I'm using the premium storage, which is recommended for the production environment, both for OS storage and data storage. And for the virtual machine, this is the username and password for the virtual machine on Azure. So let me give it another VM admin. So this requires the SSH public key. So let me go back to my command line. Already copied here. Copy the SSH public key. I'm using a standard DS13v2. I believe this is actually a 8-core machine. Let's see. Okay, it's a 16 vCPU. So, no, it's an 8-core. Okay, I'll select this. Okay, and going to the final validation stage. And you will see all the summary here, and if you don't like any of the settings, then just go back to the previous step, or if you run into issues here. Great, validation passed. I'm going to say OK. Now there's the license agreement from MarkLogic. You can read it through and create the cluster. Again, it will take about 8 to 10 minutes, so I'll keep my presentation going so that we can just come back to check the stack later. All right, let's go back to the presentation. Next, we're going to the cloud customer stories, and Sarah is going to take us through some of her stories with the customer in cloud.
Thank you. All right, my part will be very quick. I get the fun part of telling you what people are doing and experiences from our customer base. So, as most of you know, we've been in the cloud for many, many years, and we have significant customer adoption of using MarkLogic in the cloud. And so I now have the ability to share some best practices, some of the things that we've seen and learned, and tell you about what people are doing in the cloud. We have a lot of documentation, more so on the AWS side, but we're building more with the Azure. And we've got this great white paper for helping you get started specifically with AWS, and we'll be working on one for Azure. But I recommend that as a great starting point. And that has a lot of the best practices that we've learned over the years from our customers. So being in the public sector, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the customers I'm most familiar with. And you might have heard or seen some of the presentations from OSHPD, which is a California organization. It is the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development. So they're using MarkLogic to create a hospital 360 view. And this organization is part of California's transparency initiatives, where they do regulation and data transparency for things like hospital building codes, seismic readiness, and anything to do with hospitals to keep the hospitals safe for the people that go to them. In addition, they've got some things called charge master files, which are what individual hospitals may charge for their top procedures. And so people can go to that website and then compare hospitals. And these tend to be hospitals themselves comparing each other with, against other hospitals and some activists, that sort of thing. So big data transparency initiative. And they had a lot of data that was available on their website, but it was very hard to find. So they decided to start with a small project with MarkLogic, and it's going to be a WordPress integration. So the front end will be WordPress, but the search and the faceting, all of that will be MarkLogic on the back end. So it's kind of a unique thing for us, where we're helping with now state transparency initiatives. And this is a cloud-first example. So they didn't start with on-premise. They actually started cloud-first with Azure. And it's kind of cool. I think they're one of the first to use MarkLogic with Azure with a Windows operating system, and not going with the Linux. So they were able to, though, by themselves, before the project even kicked off with any of our consultants or system integrators, they installed MarkLogic in Azure, and they connected up the LDAP system to MarkLogic. So they did that all on their own before project kickoff. So it's a really great success story of how easy it is and how people can get up and running very, very quickly. Also, Maryland Department of Human Services. So this is on AWS, but it's another cloud-first initiative. So they wanted to consolidate a lot of their human services organizations and offerings into one shared data repository. So we hope that they're going to build about 12 different modules for human services on MarkLogic. They're in progress of, they finished one, and the other one's going to go live really soon. But there's things like long-term care for their constituents, as well as handling refugees. All of these things they're tough problems, because you may not have social security numbers to master people. So if you've seen some of the mastering examples or talks that we've had so far, that's what they're doing in Maryland. But another success story, and it's a way that hospitals can kind of, when organizations can kind of pool their resources from their organizations and move to the cloud, it's a cost savings for the customers. Also, there are the migrations as well. So you can have an on-premise instance and then move to the cloud, and we have tons of success over that. So this slide is a little bit of a review, but you can see that our biggest customer, can't really use their logo, but it's in the legal system. If you do a lot of legal work and searching, then you see that they have tons of data there, over 1.4 petabytes of storage, 1.2 billion documents. And so it's a significant volume that they've managed to migrate from an on-premise solution to the cloud. Also, NBC now, if you have Saturday Night Live app on your phone, that's MarkLogic behind the scenes. So that's a pretty cool one, but there's a lot of users for that. And another big successful cloud migration there. Now, one that we support back in DC quite a bit is healthcare.gov. This is arguably the most difficult IT project in all of US history. And they are currently on-premise, and they're mapping out their cloud strategy now. So I took away the time frame. There was calendar dates associated with this, but everything changes, so I didn't want to commit them in public to that timeline. But you can see this massive IT project and some of the things that they're considering in their cloud migration. So first they do the strategy and planning and decide the roadmap and the schedule. That's pretty much done at this point. And they're kind of in between that stage and the design and architect stage right now, where they're developing their shared services that they want to use with this application, determining their migration pattern. They've also recognized through this process that not all of the components for healthcare.gov have cloud rights. So they're going back to the vendors and talking to the vendors about those issues as well and working those legal issues out. Then they're going to be doing the building and development, and then migration and deployment, and then start to change all of the services that were on-premise and cut them off, and then migrate fully to the cloud. They expect this to be about a year's timeline from beginning to end. So I would imagine by this time next year they'll be fully migrated over to AWS in this case. So what have we seen? First of all, I talked to some of my colleagues, I talked to the people in the support center, and there's some best practices and things that we can advise you to do. First and foremost, use the templates. So we provide templates. We've seen as the cloud vendors change what they offer, if people have their own custom templates that they've developed, they've run into some hiccups when they migrate to newer versions of MarkLogic, and they're not using our templates that have been fully tested to go along with the cloud vendors' new features that they developed. So for the one-click offering for AWS, that was a hiccup for some of the customers that really built their own templates and didn't rely on MarkLogic. And the people that were using the MarkLogic templates had a much easier time. So it's a base that we recommend you start with. If the templates don't work for you, then let us know and we will update them. Then our installation and documentation is very specific on some of the operating system settings that you will need to manage when you move to the cloud. So for whatever reason, people don't notice the little asterisk in our installation guide and our documentation about huge page settings and so forth, pay attention to those, because we have seen that people don't follow or read the documentation, then they run into problems as well. Also, when support works with you, we're going to help you narrow down where the problem may be. So it could be the case that you have a performance issue or some unexpected behavior with your MarkLogic solution. And what we've seen is that sometimes it is not necessarily MarkLogic. It may be, but it may not be. And we've seen issues with load balancer performance, for example. And so we're going to be working with you to kind of rule out some of the things that are also associated with your stack. They may not necessarily be MarkLogic specific. And so it may be harder to debug, but there's a lot of these other components that do affect behavior in the cloud. And then we had another customer that liked the snapshots capability in AWS quite a bit. And that was something that they kind of went overboard with. So if you have a real production system that's doing a lot of read and writes, transactions, and then you're taking snapshots all the time, then that can impact performance, and that's really something that you don't want to do. In addition, there's a way to do a snapshot of an EBS, but then you can do a snapshot of like everything, and people try to think that snapshotting their whole environment and cloning that is an easy way to kind of migrate your system or get other nodes up and running. That's really not the best practice. So you can do snapshots of the EBS, but nothing more. Then Use cloud-independent tooling, so please don't rely on the vendors to monitor themselves. So you may have SLAs that you've negotiated with your cloud vendors. Don't expect the cloud vendors to necessarily police themselves in some of the areas that might be important to you. So use the best tools for the best job. All right, so with that, I'm going to hand it back to Emma for a summary, and we'll show you where we are with getting the instances up and running.
Thank you, Sarah. Let's wrap up. What are some of the key takeaways? First, MarkLogic is cloud neutral. We run in both AWS and Azure, and some other cloud vendors as well. Second, we provide easy-to-use templates. This really facilitates that for your developers to get really fast running in MarkLogic clusters in AWS or Azure. Third, Sarah took us through some of the customer successes running in cloud, migrating in cloud. I really enjoyed all the stories that Sarah told us, and I learned quite a bit from all the use cases, and it really informed me to do my job right. So I really appreciate that if you guys tell me what you want in AWS and Azure for the MarkLogic deployments. Any feedback? Any requests now? All right.
Question.
Uh-huh.
Microsoft.
Yep, hold on. We got the mic.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I read through the documentation on the AWS integrations and loved the features I was reading about integration with the APIs in MarkLogic, low level with AWS, so I can even write our own scripts to automate things. Do you have the same level of APIs for Azure inside of MarkLogic, so I can use MarkLogic APIs, MarkLogic functions that I can call to automate MarkLogic on Azure?
Well, so with AWS, we have since it was designed a few years back, so we have the managed cluster feature. So with Azure, because we designed it about a year and a half ago, some of the things were already taken care of. So we don't have the managed cluster feature, but it still works really well. And for the APIs, for example, the config management API, it's working for both cloud environments and on-prem. So you'll be able to use that for both environments. Yeah. Okay, but that's a good input that you want all the lower level APIs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me actually go. We do have a workshop, learn how to deploy on the cloud on Thursday. Maybe there are still a few spots open, and you can check with the workshop staff and to see whether you can register if you want to learn how to deploy on AWS and how to deploy on Azure with MarkLogic. And to get started, like we said, there's a lot of documentations, and you can go through this developer.marklogic.com/products/cloud. And now we get to the Q&A. And any questions?
This is just a practical question about templates. I'm interested in maybe some more like details of the mechanics. Like let's say I used a template to deploy an Azure instance, and then you guys say update your template. How does one go about, like, do I need to then redeploy the template in some way to take advantage of new Azure features, or I'm interested to hear more about how that works.
Yeah. So for both templates, especially on Azure, it's open source. So if there are new features that you want to leverage, you can customize yourself. And for the templates, we take care of the initial 0-day deployment. So after you deploy the MarkLogic cluster, you can add on other services and integrate with the MarkLogic deployments. But I'm happy to hear like what are the things that you want to add to that template.
Nothing that I specifically wanted to add. I didn't really understand how once I deploy the template, is that template now I have forked my own instance, and now that
Yes.
is there, and then I've
Yes.
used the template, and the template is done. And
Yes.
then if I want to
Yeah.
spin up another one, I would use the template. But now the template no longer applies to making changes to the instance.
So on Azure, it's that's a true statement, and we're actually probably making more changes to that. On AWS, the CloudFormation templates, you can actually use the CloudFormation template to do some updates. For example, you can add a few nodes to the your stack, or even hibernate your stack. So we're actually going to go through that exercise on Thursday if you're interested in learning how to use that template. Yeah.
But if I wanted to say, let's say Azure comes out with some new storage, and I want to use that for my forests instead of whatever I was using
Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
I would then take the template that I initially deployed, modify that, and then deploy that, or I can't use it for updates.
That might be difficult. If you can request through us to add that, but it might not be feasible to go from, say, your existing stack and using the existing CloudFormation template and somehow update your stack.
Well, and I'm saying
Yeah.
if I used your
Yeah.
template to
Right.
deploy, and then I suddenly,
Yes.
wanted to take advantage of the new.
You can just
Yes.
add it to your stack.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would update the template, and then I would take no.
So
Okay.
it's not like one-to-one. So once, this is a zero-day deployment templates, right? So after you deploy your stack, the stack belongs to yourself, right? So you can do whatever with your resources, virtual machines. You can open up more like public IP and all those things. You can just operate on the virtual machines as if you did this deployment by yourself manually. So the templates does not bound you, restrict you from modifying your
But the idea
deployment.
is I don't then continue to use the template.
So let me say it this way. I think it's probably a best practice to stay in tune with MarkLogic's template offerings, and when you upgrade to a newer version of MarkLogic, that is when you might want to download the corresponding new Azure template and start with that as a base. So if you are stuck on an older version of MarkLogic and you modify that old template significantly, you do run the risk of kind of rolling on your own and not having it necessarily be officially supported by MarkLogic. So work with us if there is some great new feature that you want. I would say it's better practice to work with our support and people like Emma to upgrade the template, and then get you migrated to a newer version of MarkLogic at that same time. Does that help?
Yeah. Thank you.
So we do have the stack open already up. So I can show you. MLW admin. So this is the AWS stack. Since it's taking a while, but I do have it open here as well. This is the AWS stack that I just created. And on Azure, let me go to resource group. Oops. We have it here. So this is the Azure stack that we just created as well. So they're successful deployments. Sorry, more questions?
You know how we kind of move to the cloud, so we get advantage of allowing for peak capacity and scaling up pretty quickly. Is there a specific type of MarkLogic node you generally can scale up quickly, or how does licensing work in terms of when I scale up and for a limited amount of time, right? I know you showed me a slide on Azure on AWS, right? Just wondering if how the licensing works. So is it prorated, in terms of how much usage I have on MarkLogic, or is it the yearly license?
So there's on AWS, there's pay-as-you-go pricing, and when you start up the instances, the price is already there. I believe it's 99 cents per hour, and you also can use your enterprise license and plug them in. So that would be just similar to your enterprise licensing, like we license by course. Yeah.
Okay, but I would not be using the enterprise license for a long duration, right? I'll just, let's say, use it for a month, right? Let's say I have like three node cluster, enterprise, and then I want to do, extra capacity in the cloud, or
You could
something
use
like that.
the hourly pricing.
I could do that. Hourly pricing is for the MarkLogic licensing, or is it for the, is that?
It is MarkLogic
Okay.
license. Yeah,
That's,
the price is MarkLogic and the instance, together.
Okay. This presentation is available online. Can I?
It will be.
Will be later.
Yeah.
All right, I'll follow up with any questions I have. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions?
We have a 25-minute break downstairs back at the main, outside the grand ballroom. And then we'll have one more session, and then there'll be the lightning talks this afternoon, and then the fireside chat with our founder. So thank you guys for your time, and thank you, Emma and Sarah, for presenting today.
Thank you.